Okay, so this little installment, we're going to be reassembling the power steering pump for a 71 Challenger. It is a Saginaw pump. Not too crazy of a pump. It's really simple. There's really just a bore. You got a rotor with some vanes here. I took it all apart the other day. Didn't take a video of it, but basically I blasted it apart, washed everything, cleaned it, and now I'm just going to reassemble it using a new kit from Edelman. Picked this up at Summit Racing. That's the part number for a Saginaw pump. Covers a ton of options for pumps over the years. And don't need a whole heck of a lot of tools. Basically, the pump assembly goes back together pretty easy. I'm going to get a little bit of Vaseline to lubricate the O-rings and pack the vanes a little bit. What else can I say about it? Really, nothing too much. The housing, the actual shell, the reservoir, I don't have that with me. It's getting cleaned and repainted. So we're going to throw this back together. Shouldn't take too long, and I'll maybe catch some bloopers or some hiccups along the way, but it's pretty straightforward. So the kit comes with a new bushing, new seals and O-rings. I'm not going to use the actual bushing itself and replace it because it's pretty tight, so it really doesn't have a lot of wear on it, so there's really no point in changing it. This is the bushing for the shaft inside the pump housing, and this has little to no play, and if you put the shaft in here in the actual pump, it feels actually tighter than the new one they give you. So I'm gonna leave that alone and start reassembling this guy here. Just readjust the camera. First, I'm going to get the seal installed for the shaft. I'm just going to double check that it does fit. Okay. So we'll get this set up in here. The camera is probably going to bounce on this, so hopefully it doesn't go too crazy. So now we have it nice and flush. Got the seal installed for the shaft, and everything's clean in here. Got a little bit of lint, nothing I'm too worried about. In fact, there's a little bit of rust hanging in that O-ring groove, so I'm just gonna whip it on the bench grinder here with the wire real quick. Okay, so let's see this camera. Yeah, I cleaned it up pretty good. Seal surface is nice and clean. That's for the outer shell for the O-ring, the big O-ring that covers, basically seals the shell to the pump. This is big fat O-ring here, so that goes on pretty much last before we assemble it for paint. So let's get some of the other O-rings out here. Now, some of them are flat for the actual body. They go through the bolts, so we're going to keep those for later when we bolt the thing together. We'll put the big O-ring back. I do believe we don't need these big flat ones right now either, so we need that guy. And that's pretty much at the two big O-rings, and that's it. Okay. So get the shaft, I'll throw a little Vaseline on it just to get it lubricated before it gets power steering fluid on it. Get a little on the seal surface here just so it's not starting dry. A little on the bore. Then we'll throw the shaft back in. And carefully get it in. We'll try and rotate it slow. There we go. That way the seal's good. Now inside, there's two alignment dowels that hold this thing together. I'm not sure if you can see that there's a brace or the bottom. Hang on a second. Let me get a poke and a screwdriver here. down here at the bottom, there's basically this plate, and there's 2 holes, and those holes line up for these dowel pins. So these dowel pins then drop in. Got 2 of them. If you pull out your factory service manual, most everything is in here to show you how to put it back together. So now that's the base. This is the actual shell for the pump to ride on, and all these little tabs ride in those grooves, and they just basically wipe this bore. It's very similar to an oil pump that would be in an engine. Just a rotary vane pump, nothing crazy. So throw a little Vaseline on it. Now I'm just trying to remember which way it went. So there's a witness mark. I don't know if you could see the witness mark for the other half of the shell. So that was sitting this direction. Okay, so we're going to put it back there, right on those pins. Lets it drop down. And then what I'll do is I'll get a little bit of Vaseline going here in each one of these grooves, and then we can throw our vanes in there one by one. And you'll see on the vanes they're actually rounded on one edge and flat on the other, so we'll put the rounded edge out. Okay, so I'll just take a little bit of Vaseline and kind of get it in there, just to help this thing on startup have a little bit of suction going on to it. Not that it really matters too much, because it will just flood with oil when you fill it. And then this is the opposite side of the plate. It rides there and seals the surface up. So we shall get this in place. I don't know how to get it in without dropping it, but there we go. Okay, so that's that. So on this thing, that's oh, you know what? We forgot the O-rings. So my bad. So here's your blooper. Let's get this plate back out of here. We got to get this. We got to get those. There's 2 big grooves here with these O-rings. These got to go in. So I'll throw a little Vaseline on them. Get this one down in that groove. Okay, there's one. Other going here. Okay, so we got the 2 sealing O-rings out here. Now if you look, the fluid will go in through the large port of the cavity, and as this rotates, it will roll these veins around and basically compress the oil, or squeeze the oil into the pressure, into high pressure. And what that does is then it pushes it out the other side. There we go. So that O-ring seals this plate off from one half of the housing, and then the other half, as the fluid gets compressed, it will then pressurize this cavity here, and then it goes out through, there's two holes in here, two ports, then it goes down through the pressure regulator. There's basically a piston and a spring, and there's basically a pressure regulator in here. So that goes on. You got a little spring to retain this cup. This cup seals the other side of that O-ring, so we want to get a little bit of lubrication on the surface. Here, stick this back in its bore. Try not to get it stuck. So we got to fight this spring here. Get this to line up straight, not cocked. And then there's a retainer ring. So this is the hardest thing to get out. And you gotta, sometimes it's here, the gap, you gotta roll it over to there's a hole on the bottom, an access hole, so you can push this out and basically get a pick under it. So you just need to compress that spring below. Hopefully I can just roll it in with my hand. And that's it. Not a lot to these pumps. There's a little screen and a check ball and spring in here. I didn't pull that apart. I just cleaned it really well, so I'm not really worried about that in particular. If it really becomes an issue, if it's stuck or something like that, we can take it off in the car. It's not a big deal. So in here goes the spring and the plunger, and that gets retained inside here by this fitting, which takes the fluid pressure, and then that's your pressure port going out to your box essentially. But we can't put that together because the outer shell has to go on first with the two seals here. Then there's a seal on this that goes through the shell and holds that whole assembly together. So for the intensive purposes of rebuilding this pump, there's really not a lot to it. Blow it apart, clean it, put your new seal in, bushing if it's worn out, and that's pretty much it. So it's a pretty simplistic pump. Change your couple O-rings. Like I said, there's some flat O-rings, like this guy will go here once we get the housing ready, and then there's two small ones that basically go on the bolt holes that retain the back side of the shell, and that's it. So this thing is ready to go once the shell reservoir is done, and then it'll get the pulley mounted back on it with the keyway. We could actually throw the key back in it too, because I have that ready. There's your Woodruff key. Very tight fit key. Did have to pry on it pretty good to get it out. Let me get her to drift. And if you get it squared up, you can get a brass drift. Just tap that back in there. So that's ready to go. So right now, pump's done. We're gonna bag up the spring, the piston, and the fitting, and keep those for when we're ready to put the housing back together. So we got that. Only thing left is the outer O-ring to go on the body, and that goes around right there, and it's done deal. So there's your quick little inside of a 71 Dodge Plymouth Saginaw power steering pump. If you have yours that's leaking, go get yourself a kit. Like I said, there's your Edelman part number, the 7910. Got it from Summit. I think the kit was $7 or $10. Pretty cheap, pretty easy fix for you guys, Mopar guys, especially cleaning up these pumps in these old cars. See you later.